Our home on Earth is a distant memory, and the first colonies growing pains on planet B are behind us. Only the llama, the perfect companion for this arid terrain, remembers how hard it was to start over. We landed on this planet intent on creating a new and better world. In addition to productive types of industry, infrastructure, and almost democratic politics, the dodo is the symbol of life and renewal. To reach new triumphs even faster, we bought ourselves positions as governors. Sadly, we lost sight on our singular goal and became greedy. Now only power and our bank balance interests us. Of course, we do our best to hide that from the general public since we want to rise even further. President. Hi and welcome back to another video of JPlay. I am Marcus, and as you can see today it's all about Planet B, which I basically got from this year's Essen Spiel. It had a very high price point, which I really don't understand why that was. Maybe because of sustainable components, I don't know. So this is not a review copy, I really bought this myself. I tried it once in a full 4-player playthrough, that is, and today I think I will focus on a 3-player demo. I'm not so sure if I will be doing a full playthrough of this game, because thinking this through for more than one player can be pretty stressful. So I may want to play this until the first election or so. Let's see how things go. And maybe then I will also do somewhat of an extended part 2 or so if you are interested. But very unlikely that I will be doing a full playthrough of this game. Before I get started, a huge shout out to all of my patrons and channel members out there. You guys are really amazing. So if you want to support my little channel here, you will find a link to my page on Patreon. You can join me here directly on YouTube. There's a little thanks button beneath the video. If you want to leave something for the tip jar, like and subscribe, everything helps. And yeah, with this being said, this is pretty much the setup for a 3-player game. So this main board here, which is a relatively small game board by the way, is double-sided. So this is the side for 2 to 3 players, which comes with, I think, fewer spaces for those suitcases here. That's all that it does as far as I can tell. In this game we are playing until we have basically brought up all of those corporations onto the board. I think there are 7 of those, and as soon as the 7th corporation has been placed onto the board, so the last one, this will then trigger the end of the game. Then we do some end of game scoring, and whoever has the most amount of victory points will win. You see this paper money here, and I totally dislike paper money, and it's especially tedious in this one here. So it works nice for the money, but there are also victory points on the other side. And victory points in this game are basically concealed, which means as soon as you get, let's say, 5 victory points, you take a 5 billies, I think that's the currency in this game. You get this 5, you flip it face down, and now you have 5 victory points for the end of the game. So money is always open, victory points are not. And yeah, really dealing with these paper money billies, I don't really know. But that's basically the only thing that kind of bugged me in this game. Apart from that, I was really very much enjoying this. Each player starts with 4 of those workies here. We have 2 crafties and 2 brainies. We are having somewhat of a drafting mechanic in respect to those starting buildings. So we have 1A, 1B, 1C building. They will award you more victory points, more powerful effect, but they will also cost you way more money to build that. Our happiness track will be at the neutral position up here. We are not starting the game with any of those resources. What those are, it doesn't really matter too much. I think this is simply me, this is helium, this is electronics or so, this is water, you name it. There are always ways to get more of those, and yeah, we are also starting with our headquarters up here, which we can use as our starting building, and that's basically it. There is some kind of a tiebreaker in respect to the first election, so you're dealing out those player boards here. Let's sort of somewhat randomly, or you start basically giving 1 of the 1s to the first player, then the player board with a 2 to the second player, and so on. And this will break the tie in the, let's say, opposite direction for the first election. After that election, everyone has been assigned a title. So the president, we have the vice president, and we have the llama and the dodo, or the other way around. There is an abbreviation for that, and yeah, ultimately you're looking, or obviously you're looking at the German version of the game. I'm not even sure if there is already an English version out. It might be. I know there are English rules out there, and yeah, for the really most part of the game, this game is really language independent, other than some of those titles, some of those news cards, they have German titles like the Freedom of Art here, Propaganda. Okay, this doesn't really make a big of difference. Weapons test here, but again, the majority or the vast majority of this game is really based on those icons here, which are relatively clear, I would think. As mentioned, blue is the starting player for this round, and there is not an awful lot that you can do other than taking one of those suitcases and placing them next to one of those corporations, and then you are triggering those. There are, I think, corporations which are on the white side, and there are corporations that are on the red side. Let's say the middle corporation always starts from the red side. They are flipping then to the white side, which is usually a little bit weaker, but it also comes with some, let's say, detrimental effects. So you're losing some happiness over here, and they have been brought out randomly. But there are only 3 of those A corporations out there, so this is what you get. But whatever, this corporation could have started on this position here. But again, we are placing now one of those suitcases here, and even though it comes with somewhat detrimental effect, I think I want to start with the red corporation here, or with the corporation on the red side. So they're somewhat kind of immoral or so, I don't know. Basically a shady corporation. So we are placing our suitcase here, and next we are triggering all of those, let's say, actions in these action boxes here. Typically you can do that in any order, but as soon as you see some kind of a payment in respect, or that shows as a red number with a small arrow down, you have to pay that first. And if you cannot pay, you're also not allowed to take that action as a whole. So in this case, blue is basically losing 1 happiness here, which could be a bad thing when we are now moving into a vote. But again, vote is still relatively far out, so I think we are okay with that. So we have paid the cost for this action box here. So now we get 1 building action, we get 1 of those faction actions, so we can either advance our influence or we can trigger the influence, and we get up to 3 of those workies action. In this case, we are allowed to either take up to 3 workies, and these can be either brainies or crafties, or we can place them onto our buildings to trigger them, or we can do a mixture of those. So we can take 1, whatever, brainy for example, and place 2 of those workies then onto our building. So that's a little bit up to us. The iconography sometimes is different. Sometimes, for example, you don't see this little check mark here next to the influence action. In this case, you're only allowed to increase your influence, but not triggering this. But again, I will come to that as soon as we get there. In this case, I don't really think that the order of things does matter too much. So I think let's start with the influence action down here, which is a rather simple one. Again, as we did have a check mark on this card, we can either trigger the current position. Right now we are at 0, so we are not going to do that, or we can advance our influence. Because it's a question mark, we can advance in any of those 3. I think there are the futurists, like these, the techies. I think these are the capitalists or so. They are all about billies, and these are, I don't know, revolutionists. I don't really know, but it doesn't really matter. They do award you different, let's say, bonuses the further you get, and for those capitalists you can either get an awful lot of money, or you can get crafties here, for example. Oh, these are brainies actually, or here we can get the crafties if we need them. But I think early on, let's simply advance 1 step here on the capitalist track here, and the next time we get the same choice, we would now then decide to either again move up to whatever potentially unlock better bonuses, or we can simply trigger those. In this case, we would simply move back, so we could gain 6 billies or 8 victory points. But again, that was already the very first action on this card here. Next, I guess we are we building next? Yeah, let's build next. And with a building action, you either really build an actual building from your hand, so you have to do something, or you can pretty much discard one of your buildings. They go underneath their respective piles, and then you gain 5 billies for that, so 5 coins. In this case, I think as we drafted those cards, so we had some kind of a plan, I guess let's build something. And now I have to warn you, as some of those cards are not necessarily suited for children. I mean, yeah, cosmetics lab, that's not really the problem, but within the cosmetics lab you're doing for animal research here, for example, animal testing, for example, or we're going for some of those stem cells lotions. We have some illegal clinics, we have an organ farm, so yeah, you get the idea. But that's kind of a very, very dark humor in this game, so you don't play it with your little ones unless you are willing to teach them something. I don't know. I think there are also brothels in this deck of cards. Yeah, in theory you could move some of those cards, but a lot of those do have very strange effects on them, very strange things that you are doing. And from what someone told me, I think it was Marco, one of my former patrons, actually told me that the original idea for this game was not based on this planet B, on an alternative, let's say, planet somewhere out in space, but really in a banana republic. And if you know computer games like Tropico, then I think you might get the idea, which also has some very dark humor in the end. But ultimately, we are going to build something. We start the game with 10 billies, so those two are pretty much out of the picture. Yes, we could sell those, but this would then be our building action. But I think the cosmetics lab for $8 isn't terrible. So I think we are paying, I think we even have that in change, so we are paying our 8 billies here in order to build that building. So for now, this building doesn't do an awful lot of things other than that we are immediately getting 5 victory points. And now we are getting one of those 5s, but we are now flipping them to the other side. So we have scored our very first 5 points of the game. This game is very high scoring. So yeah, 5 points is nice, but ultimately will not win us the game. And then in theory, in order to activate them, we would now need those workies actions, which we still have, in fact. So keep in mind, we have done this. So we have paid, we have used our influence action, we have built our building, therefore we spent money and we gained some victory points for that. We still have 3 workies actions, and again we can either take up to 3 workies, we can place them, or we can do any combination of those. The question now really is, do we want to activate the cosmetics lab and go for those animal testing here, which would really make our crowd very, very unhappy. So we would lose 2 happiness, we would gain 1 influence with the futurist, which is not bad, and we would gain $20. On the other hand, we could use our headquarters right away to also get us some points, but we would gain some of our happiness back. That's now really a thing, but getting the $20 here, I think that's what we are going to do. So first of all, we are grabbing with one of our 3 actions 1 additional crafting. So we have still 2 more actions to go, and I guess, yeah, let's activate. So this is 1 action, this is 2 actions. So now we have basically fully staffed the one and only department of that building here, and now we get to choose if we want to go for this or for that. In order to do this, I mean, this would be 20 victory points, that's huge. We would need to spend one of these helium, which we don't have, so we cannot go for this action box. So we have to go for those animal testings here, and we can pay that, which means we are losing 1 to more happiness. But again, the election is still far out. That's at least how what I hope. And so we have paid for this. Next we get 1 step on the futurist track here. And keep in mind, this symbol doesn't show a check mark, which means we could not have opted to instead trigger our influence or use our influence. In this case, you really have to advance accordingly. But what's really more important is we just gained $20 or billies right back. So the blue player is at $22. So we have basically ended our entire encounter with this corporation here. The last thing to do is to fill up our hand of cards up to 3, because we have just built buildings. So I guess we could go for an A, for an B, or for a C building. We just have built an A building, and getting some easy buildings could be okay, but that's one thing that I also did during my first playthrough. I really was focusing on the very easy things. You can get them out, you can use them very often, but they also don't award you a lot of points. I mean, if you really look at some of those cards, those can score an awful lot of victory points. And some of the B and C cards, I think there is one that gives you 70 victory points when you're triggering this. It's awfully expensive to trigger it, but still, that's really not nothing. But still, let's start small, and we also see what those buildings typically cost you. So 4 to 10 billies, 14 to 20 billies, and 24 to 30. And you also see what kind of workies you need. So for A buildings, you only need crafties, for example. And yeah, let's go for it anyway. So let's see what we get. Again, I will play the blue player openly, the others a little bit more hidden, so that you get some surprises. And this is a weapon store basically. So we can build laser tasers, we can build a shotgun. And the shotgun is nice actually, because everyone would lose. Oh, well, that's mean. That's really dark. So if we're using the shotgun, we are losing basically these alloys here, or this metal or whatever it is. We would gain 2 influence with the orange faction on the board. We gain 15 victory points, and everyone, including ourselves, would lose 1. I think crafty in this case. Yeah, that's a mean one, but yeah, we have taken it. It goes into our hand, and this ends our turn. So we're moving over to the red player, who goes second. And the same rules apply. We will take 1 suitcase and we'll place it next to one of those corporations. If the red player would now also go in here, it would be terribly tempting for the final player, the yellow player, to also go there, because whoever places the last suitcase on this thing triggers basically a change. They will gain some extra votes, for example. So this could be really, really huge. And this is something that we have seen in a 4-player game, where the 4th player, at least for the first couple of rounds, triggered this relatively often, or got this advantage relatively often, because sometimes those corporations are so clear where you have to go for that it's really an advantage being last here. But I think in this case we do want to break the order of things, and I also want to show you as much as possible. So I guess red is going to this corporation. So it's a normal white corporation, so we don't have to pay anything, so we can take those actions in any order we see fit. This is a production action, this is the building action, we already know that, and this is a news action. Let's start with the production action. You have 2 production rows, and you can trigger either of those with every production action. So we can go for the topmost or for the lowest most. If you don't changing anything, we would gain 1 plastics, 1 of these Illyrium or whatever it is, Iridium, I think it's Iridium, and 1 water, or we can go for the final row. These rows and these faction boards are somewhat asymmetric, so they don't have all the same icons at the same thing. They have the same value in respect to those resources, but they are arranged a little bit differently. What we can do though, before we are triggering one of those production rows, we can spend 10 of our valuable billies to get one of those tiles and overlay those. Let's say instead of water, we want to produce 2 water. We could use one of those for 10 billies. And at that point in time, it will stay as long as we want to remove it. Later on, we can remove this tile again if we want the thing beneath it, or if we want to build over everything else. That's totally legal, but we're not getting any money back. So the question is, what do we want? Meat is nice, because meat we can always sell for 6 billies, which is good. All the others or other resources do have a somewhat of a variable pricing, depending on a little bit where the corporation still stands. So the middle corporation here, for example, is on the red space because it's on the red side, which means the price for water and these nature products here is only 1 billion. That's really not a lot. On the other hand, here to the right, getting those electronics or helium we could gain for $8 if we spend those, or 4 if it basically this corporation flips to the other side, which will happen once the 3rd suitcase has been placed next to it. But you also need to, let's say, keep in mind that some of these buildings here also require you to spend some of your resources. So preparing for that might also not be a terrible choice. So I believe we are going to do that actually. I think we are spending our starting money, 10 billies, in order to build some meat. What do we need the least of? I think it's either water or nature, right? I think maybe let's looking at his cards. I think we don't need the water right away. So let's place the meat over this one. And now we are triggering our production action. The way how this works, I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. We are taking those containers and place those accordingly. So we are getting 1 iridium, we are placing it here. We are getting 1 meat, we are placing it here. It also shows you how much you get when you sell it. And we get 1 nature in here. Later on, you will simply add more of those containers in here. I don't really know why they simply would have moved this up. This would have worked as well. And I believe for a 4-player game, there aren't enough containers to fill them all. But as far as I remember, we didn't get there either. So typically, you're also selling or spending your stuff. And anytime during the game, you can really sell those things for monies when it's your turn, basically. But I think at this point in time, that's totally fine. Let's hold off. So red has done its production action. And yeah, okay, now I think, ooh, okay. Maybe that's not bad. Maybe that's not really bad. Next, before we are building, let's see what news event we are going to trigger, because we have 3 to choose from. We have a stack 1, a stack 2, and a stack 3. The stack 2 cards are all, I think, immoral cards. And when you're using those cards, you take the topmost card and you place it next to your player board, always on top of other news cards. So only the topmost card is then counting if you are a moral or an immoral player in that case. So when you see that icon next to your player board, you are immoral, which has some different effects throughout the game. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good, but yeah, that's something that you have to keep in mind. I think for the stack 3, it's a 50-50 kind of spread between moral and immoral cards. And again, you get to choose all of those. And this freedom of art is a very nice thing. We get some money back. We get basically a vote into the bag. We start the game with 3 votes each in the voting bag here. So this is increasing our chances getting the president, which is an awful lot of victory points. And we get 5 victory points. And I think that's what we are going to do. So we are going for the freedom of art. So we are placing it next to our player board here, and then we trigger them all. The first one is, again, rather simple. We take one of those vote tokens here and put them in the bag and shaking it well off. Awesome. Nicely done. We are getting 5 money. I think we might really need it. And we also get 5 victory points. So we're taking also a 5er and putting that to the other side. So blue is no longer in the lead. Hooray. So that was already this action down here from the news card. And then last but not least, we get to build. And ooh, can we do that? I think that's now really a tough one. Because if we can again sell a building for $5, but do I want to do that? I definitely want to build, I guess. Yeah, let's do that. Again, the problem is we are down to $5 only. That's a problem. But again, we can sell those resources. The problem is, again, we can sell those leaves for $1 or $4. Right now, the price is in the cellar, so it's really not worth selling it right now. In respect to this iridium, that's 3, but I think we need more than 3. So I guess we have to sell our meat. This is always $6, so we really need this. So we are also taking $6 here. And this allows us to build the greenhouse here for 9 in total. So we're spending 4 plus 5, so that's $9. So he's down to 2, but that's okay. Therefore, we are scoring 5 points again. So he's already up at 10 points. Nicely done. And I believe those were all of his actions here. Yes, we produced, we built, and we have triggered a news card. Last thing to do is to reveal a new news card. So let's see what this is. So this is a maintenance robot, I guess. And of course, yeah, we also have to draw up to our hand size. So we also built, I think this was also an A building. Maybe red is going a different path and we'll go for another B building here accordingly. Moving over to yellow, again, same rules apply. They will grab one of those suitcases. And in order to do something different again, to some extent, we are going to this corporation here. So again, we are getting a production action. We are gaining an influence action. This is again one of those influence actions which we can also trigger instead of advancing our influence. And we get 2 of those workies actions. Again, either grabbing more workies and or placing them onto our departments. Again, let's start with the production, and in this case we will simply go for the topmost row. So they get 1 plastics or materials or whatever it is, 1 water, and 1 major good here someplace. I think when you do, there is also a Mariana shop or so where you can then do stuff with that and using the same resource here. It's basically everything nature. A resource could be also food or so, I don't know. But that was already the production action, and we haven't used any of our overlay tiles here, so I think we want to hold on to our money here. Next we get one of those influence actions, and looking at the yellow players building cards, I think it's important for them to move on this orange faction here accordingly. Again, this would be one of those where we could have triggered that, but again, as we are starting off at position 0 here, there's nothing to gain there, only from the first space onward, we are actually getting something for that. So triggering this while we are down here doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And last but not least, we are getting 2 workies actions. And I guess in this case, we are simply placing 1 crafty and 1 brainy onto our headquarters here. Again, you don't have to fill your departments. You can also start preparing those for a future round. But once you have occupied basically a full department in this case, you have to trigger it. And you get those workies back and get released those pretty much at the end of a vote. So once they're there, they're typically there. There might be effects where you can pull some off. I think, yeah, there are some buildings which allow you to do that, or some news cards maybe to allow you to do that. But typically they remain here. So we can go for a company celebration, or we can do some hacking. I think we wanted some money, right? So we can either take 10 billies here, or we can place one of those, I think, cheating tokens onto our player board here, which would allow us to cheat during an upcoming election. But I think we are still not there yet. So let's grab the money instead. So the yellow player is at 20 quid, which could come in handy relatively soon. But that's also the end of their turn. We are moving back to the blue player. So again, we are grabbing one of those suitcases, and now blue doesn't have a choice. Wherever they go, they will pretty much unlock the 3rd space of either of those corporations here. That's, I guess, okay. The question is, what are we going to do? I think we definitely want to place some workies. So it's either this or that. We don't want to lose any more happiness. This can be very, very brutal, actually. So I think in this case, let's place the suitcase in here. So we are also going to produce something. And as we don't have the money, we are not going for any of those overlays. Keep in mind, we are down to 4. Oh no, what am I talking about? We have 22, exactly. We have triggered, we've done the animal testing here. Oh, okay, that might change things a little bit, but this is where the game really gets tricky. Playing this for more than 1 player can be, wow, that's so tough, believe me. So with that in mind, we could, in fact, instead go for a different action then. So yeah, let's totally take that back. We are placing our suitcase in here. So we want to build something. We are still going to produce. I think that's still key. And I think we might pull off something tricky here. So we are going to spend, yeah, let's do that, 10 billies here in order to grab ourselves the helium. I think we are placing the helium. What else do we need? I think it's not a lot, actually. I think, again, we want the helium. Let's move over here a little bit so we can spend the healing on this stem cell lotion. So, and we need, I guess we need also some plastics, but we don't need the rest. So I think we are placing it like this here, for example. So we're triggering the bottom row. We are getting 3 of those containers. So we are getting 1 material, we are getting 1 helium, which we could sell for $8 right away. But I think let's not do that just yet. And we are getting 1 of those leaf resources here. Nice. Okay, then should we build first, or should we trigger the news card first? I think we are going with the news card here, so this icon down there. And again, we are going for the pile 1. Again, you can choose any one of those, so you don't have to wait for 2 or 3. You can go for them right away. This is pretty nice here, actually. We're getting 2 votes of propaganda, and we get 10 victory points right away. But I think we can get way more when we are triggering this one here, because again, the election is still relatively far out, so I guess we want to use our buildings as much as possible, right? So yeah, we are going for those maintenance robots here. We are placing it next to our player board. It doesn't show the immoral icon here, which means we are still a cool player. And this one says take 1 of your workies, or basically brainies or crafties, from 1 of our built buildings back. Or we can simply go for 1 brainy. But of course, we want to unlock our building here again. So we are taking it back, which means with our next action, we can trigger it again. I mentioned this, I think, only a couple of minutes before, that there are effects which allow you to do that, and the card was right there, and I totally forgot that. So that was really, really nice. So we can trigger this again, and then we can go for the stem cell lotion. Now that will be huge for sure. Last thing to do is to build, and I guess we could go for the weapon store. We have the 10, we get 6 more points. We can trigger it for money. I think let's go for it, right? I mean, again, I told you, I was doing the same strategy with my last session, basically. But let's do that. So we are spending the 10. Therefore, we will get 6 more victory points. So let's put them in here. And I will exchange those bills when I need to. And I believe that's basically it. Again, the last thing to do is to refill the hand. And I think in this case, I will go for another B building, which is the distillery. Yep, can be nice, I don't know. But before we move over to red, let's reveal a new card. Okay, knowledge preservation or so. 5 victory points, or we can place a cheat plate and we gain 1 faction bump. Okay, now over to red. Again, there is an incentive to move here to basically unlock this space, flipping it to the other side. We will get some votes. The problem now really is that the actions here are not necessarily the best for the red player. Red is down to only 2 billies, $2. Yeah, of course, we could always sell a building, but you typically don't want to do that. So in this case, we may not take that action. So instead, we are going with this corporation here. And I believe we are starting with the influence bump here. And I believe red has to go for those fellas here, the capitalists. Before we produce, I think we are going with the workies action here. And we really want some money. So we are going for the greenhouse here. So we are placing 2 crafties onto this building. Now we can either spend 2 water, which we don't have. And I think we don't get it. 4 bumps in respect to happiness is huge, but I think there was an idea. We will go with these soybeans here. So we have to spend the influence that we just gained. So now you see there is really, or the order of things can really matter with those actions. So we paid the price here, which means we are getting 2 more leaves. Right now the leaves are not really worth a lot, but I guess we will be able to spend those. And you have always, or these are kept at 4. Any excess you have to immediately sell for the current market price. So in this case, we have done this, but the more important thing is we will also gain 20 more billies. I mean, that was really important for that, getting this action and the money here. So I think that's fine. We can still produce, and I guess we are going to produce here again. Should we do that, or should we go for water now? Because for this we could have the 4 bumps here is really huge, but then we would have to spend more money again. Do we need? I think we are going to produce down there again. We need the meat for something, so let's stay on target here. So 1 iridium, 1 meat, and 1 more leaf, and I believe that's the action for red, right? Yeah, we haven't built anything. Over to yellow. They can choose which one to trigger. Of course, we could still go in here and give whatever those 2 votes to the blue player, but I think let's not do that. And the idea for yellow was to build, I believe. I think we wanted to build. So yeah, let's do that. So first of all, we are taking our action before we are resolving this. This will be always kind of the last thing that we are doing to flip these things. So let's do that. So does it matter if we produce or build first? Do we go for the news action? Let's build first. And we are going for the toy factory here for 15 bucks, or billies in this case. So we are spending this. So we are basically exchanging 2 of those, flipping those to the other side. So we have also some victory points now for yellow. Nicely done. Then we are producing again. I would really love to upgrade my production line here with something else, but yeah, we don't have the money just yet, but that's still good enough. So we are taking 3 more things, right? So I guess we are producing in the top row here. So we are going for the material, we are getting water, and we are getting the leaf plant-based resource here. And our last action from this corporation is a news action. This one here is awfully tempting. We would gain 2 more votes into the bag, or we could gain one of those cheat tiles and we would gain 10 victory points. The problem now really is we would be immoral, because that will be the topmost card on our discard pile. For us, again, each player has their own news discard pile adjacent to their deck. That's an interesting one. This is simply 5 victory points, or again a cheat tile and 1 faction bump, but I think this is much better. No, let's do that. Let's actually do that. So we are going for this news card here, the propaganda, which means we are taking 2 of those vote tiles and putting these into the bag. So we are not going for the cheat tile here. Then we will gain 10 victory points. So nice. Again, we are flipping those to the other side. And this was basically the news card. Again, we will place that next to our discard pile. And now we are immoral because the side is showing. And that's basically the end of our action. We could still sell stuff because the price is going to drop somewhat. We could now debate if we want to sell the material, but because it's only going from 3 to 2, I think we don't need to panic sell now. So I guess that's fine. Let's call it good. Let's reveal the next stage 2 card here. That's a gigantic cruise ship. Everyone gets a happiness and we gain 1 faction bump. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But okay, no one has to trigger that if they don't want to. And now we deal with the corporation flip. So we are following this, let's call it workflow here. First of all, we would gain either 2 votes into the bag, or if we are immoral, and keep in mind, yellow is now immoral, we would gain $5 instead. But that's fine. I think we can use those $5 pretty nicely. So we have dealt with this step here. Then the next step is in here. We are removing all those suitcases. If we are on the white side on this track, we are flipping this to the red side. We are also moving the disc down here. So the price has changed somewhat, but again, not the end of the world. So this action on this corporation here has significantly changed now. So we're getting 3 workies, a build action and a news action. I think it feels a little bit, I'm not sure if it's really stronger, but it's different. But we have to pay for that with basically losing some happiness here. And then last thing on this step is to move the voting marker 1-2 spaces here to the right. There are sometimes rewards which would also allow you to move it back, and depending on where you are, if you want a vote to happen, you can manipulate things a little bit. But as soon as we're ending our turn and the markers on this final space here, we will trigger an election, and then yeah, I think there's no going back from there. But I believe those were all of the actions of the yellow player. No, I think we still have to draw a card. I should have done that before I basically done this stuff, but again, not really a big deal. Let's simply go for another B card here. Back to blue, and I think we also want to trigger a corporation flip, right? So we're taking a suitcase and placing it in here. First of all, we are taking our actions here, and which order to go for? Does it matter? It does actually. I think let's produce first. We will definitely go for the bottom row here. So we are getting 1 material, we are getting 1 helium, and we are getting 1 leaf. We could now sell the helium because right now the price is still at 8. The thing is, we need helium here to trigger this one. And maybe I should show this to you. The stem cells lotion here, which for 1 helium we could gain 2 faction bombs. These could be different faction bombs, and 20 victory points. So I guess going for the money, but it's still 8, which would give us a lot of flexibility for the rounds to come. So I guess as we still have that tile here, maybe there is no pressure. So we are selling 1 for sure. This will give us $8. Let's do that. I think we need some money here. So we have sold 1. We could keep selling, but I guess we are okay. Let's hold on to the rest of the stuff. Nice. So this was the production. Then we are getting the faction bump, so the influence. And I believe I will continue on the capitalist track. So now I could have now decided to not move. I could use the checkmark icon instead. So basically moving back and then trigger one of those rewards. But I think let's keep moving for now. So this was our influence action. And last but not least, we get 2 workies actions. With 1, we are triggering this. So we have basically placed it. And for the other, I think we are going for, we really need a lot of workies actually. Crafties. Crafties are the orange ones. So I think let's go for another orange one here. So we had 2. 1 is triggering this. Normally you really do that immediately, but in this case, order of things do not really matter. We will go for the stem cell lotion, which means we are giving away or spending our helium. I think it's helium. So we are getting 2 faction bumps. And again, these could be different factions, but totally. Let's continue moving here. 1 and 2. The next time we are moving, we are not gaining anything, not extra steps, but we are getting 4 victory points instead. And if we are dropping out here, basically we are choosing to trigger or spending our influence, we could gain either 15 billies and a building action or 20 points and a building action. So this can be really, really nice. But let's not forget the 20 victory points here. Nicely done. Cool. I think those were all of the actions from that faction. Sorry, corporation. So again, we are triggering this. We are not, and we don't get to choose. So we are not immoral, which means we have to drop 2 votes into the vote bag here. So those will be 2 blues. We are putting this in here. Okay, so we have taken care of this. Then we are cleaning out those suitcases. We are here on the white side, which means we are flipping it over. The next time we would trigger this corporation, this would be discarded. Then we would bring out the first B corporation here. But for now, they are all red. So let's move this one down here as well. Let's also not forget to move the election marker 1-2 spaces forward. So one more step and we will trigger an election finally. But that's basically it for this round. And this will be bad news for the blue player actually. Because if we are triggering an election relatively soon, not only will blue lose 3 workies and they have to take it from their ready area here, but they will come back before we are doing this. But this also means that because everyone is so unhappy that they will basically give their votes to the other parties, to the other players in this case. So each other player will gain 1 vote of their color into the election bag. So that can be pretty penalizing. So I didn't really think that through, but there weren't a lot of opportunities to increase. Maybe again our headquarters. If we are going for a company party, we would gain 2 more, but then we would still not be at neutral. I mean, if we're on the happy side, we would gain some extra income and we would be allowed to drop votes into the election bag. So wow, this can be pretty nice. But for blue, yeah, maybe he's not getting president for the first term, but that's okay, I guess. Okay, over to the red player. Let's take a suitcase and we may be able to pull something off actually. Let's place it here, which means either the yellow or the blue player could trigger an election. Red knows that blue is currently not really that interested in triggering an election because they will lose stuff, but everyone else, like the yellow player, could say, okay, let's totally go for that. So blue is definitely vulnerable here, and I think we may want to trigger that. Let's see how things go. First of all though, red has to basically drop their happiness down by 1 level, but I think we will be able to recover from that. Then we are, I think, building first, and the idea is to build a restaurant for 14 bucks. So we are spending 20, we are getting 6 back, so we still have some reserves, but we are also gaining 10 victory points. Hooray! I think let's do the workies actions first. We get 3 of those. For 1, we are taking 1 crafty. And you have a cap here for 8 crafties and 8 brainies. You can never go beyond that. So then we have 2 more. 1 is going... Oh, I see that these are 2 departments actually. Oh, we can trigger this building here twice. Oh, that's nice. These are 2 separate departments. I see that now. Ooh, I think that's the first building we have out here. That's even better. So again, we had 2 more actions, right? 1, we are triggering the restaurant first. So we are going for the filet mignon in this case, which means we have to spend 1 meat, which we have, and therefore we gain 4 happiness bumps. 1, 2, 3, 4. We always count the neutral one, by the way, as well. And we gain 2 influence on the, I keep forgetting what faction the orange one is, but ultimately it doesn't really matter. 1 and 2 faction bumps here. Didn't have a check mark, which means we couldn't have triggered, but we were at 0 anyway, so not a big deal. We still have 1 more workies action left, so we might as well use it again on the restaurant. Unfortunately, we are out of meat, which means we can no longer serve filet mignons, but we can go for the astronaut food, which will simply give us 5 more coins and 5 more victory points. Okay, I totally take that. That was truly nice. And then, last but not least, we gain the faction bump here, and we get to choose. Again, now we can either move our orange further or any other one first, or we can trigger the orange faction here. And if we would trigger, we would either gain 3 crafties or we could gain 1 water and 2 leaves. So in this case, no, let's keep moving. Up here we could gain some meat, which would be huge, a nice synergy with our restaurant. So I think let's keep moving down there for now. Cool, but I think those were all of their actions for red. Over to yellow, and they really now have to think, do we want to trigger the election or not? Because again, this will always happen. When one corporation is full, we will move the voting marker 2 spaces. It will not move any further, so if we are hitting a left or right max area, then we will stay there, or the marker will stay there, but we will still trigger the vote. But is that the best we can do now? And I think they can do something meaningful, right? So they could go for these blonde dolls here. So for 1 plastic, which they have, they would gain 2 bumps here and 25 victory points, which is really not nothing. The problem is they don't get any votes right now because they are immoral. Still, do we want to take the risk or not? They all dropped some stuff in there, so I guess we may want to pull that one off, right? It may not be ideal, but again, I want to show you as much as possible, right? So let's definitely go in here. So we will trigger an election relatively soon. First of all, we will have to drop our happiness down by 1, but I think this will be okay. Next, we can build, or we can, let me think about that. Yeah, let's do build first, right? So we are building a brothel. Again, it's not really entirely meant for kids, so we are spending $6, right? Yeah, 6 billies, and for that we will get 4 victory points in return right away. Nice. This was our build action. Then we can go for the faction bump, and as I've never really tried that before, I think yellow is going to advance on the futurist. The futurist can give you an awful lot of either brainies or votes, and later here it's basically both, so that can be pretty nice. And here we even get the action to trigger that. There will be corporations later on where there will not be any possibility for you to trigger your workies. This can be very, very limiting. So timing is everything in this game. So that was that. Then we still get 3 workies actions. And yeah, what do we do? I was going to go for this one, but I guess we are also okay to use our brothel actually. But for that we only need 1. So I guess we are taking 1 here. We are also taking 1 more here. I think we need more crafties than we need brainies at this point in time. So we have 1 more action left, and with that we are producing some VR movies. So we're getting 5 victory points for that. So again, we're flipping those over, and we will also gain 1-2 bumps here on our happiness. So at least we are now on the plus side of things. We're getting some money out of this, and we will be allowed to drop 1 extra vote before we are actually going to the election. So those were all of our actions, right? We built, we have moved or used the influence, and we have placed our workies. Yes. Again, unfortunately, yellow is immoral, so we only get 5 bucks. Again, we might use the bucks, don't get me wrong, but now getting those 2 votes in there could have been huge. So then we are basically removing those things. Because here we are on the red side, on the middle track, we will now flip it to the white side. So this is working a little bit contradictory to these other tracks here. So when this is now also through, we are removing it, which means this is now moving up to the white area. And then last but not least, we are moving this thing in here. Now I believe we are still even that though it was basically the end of that turn, we are still triggering the election. The first thing is rather simple. We are all taking our workies back, but only the ones that are on basically completed departments. If let's say we would have prepared this for the last round, then we could choose if we want to keep them here or if we want to pull them off. But in this case, all of those were fully occupied, so we don't have a choice. They all come back. Now we also have to obey any capacity limits here, but right now everyone is fine. I will also do that for the other players, so they will all gain the workies back. Next, we check our happiness. Let's start with the blue player. This will be devastating. Because they're down here, they have to lose 3 workies now. That's a tough one. So I guess we are going this and this. Losing 3 workies this way is really brutal. And then we are also adding 1 red and 1 yellow voting token into the vote bank. Again, we do that before we are pulling the votes out for the election. This is really, really brutal. They move back to the neutral position. So with the next one, everyone has forgotten what we have promised and what not. Let's check the red player. They will gain $6 dollars, X billies, and they will also be allowed to add 3 more votes into the bag. I think there is a good chance that they may become president, so then we are also moving it back down here. And last but not least, we are doing the same for the yellow player, $2 and at least 1 vote that goes into the bag. And then we are also resetting this. Then we are moving into the election, starting with the current player who triggered the election. This is the yellow player, and then going around in the turn order, they will pull 3 votes from the bag. There are ways to increase that by using those cheat tiles. So let's say one of the players would have updated or upgraded their player board with one of those cheat tiles. This would give you an additional draw each time you are drawing. This goes around the table until the bag is empty. So we are pulling all the votes out of the bag. So you might ask, okay, but then it's clear who's getting elected, because if you're pulling them out, you kind of know who have put in most. No, that's not how it works. It really depends on which votes you are actually pulling out. So only the votes in your color in front of you will count at the end of the vote. So let's quickly do that. So in this case, no one upgraded this. The other cheat tile here would have simply given us 1 direct vote right off the get-go. So for this vote, the yellow player would have started with 1 vote right off the bat. Again, no one did the upgrade. So let's pull 3 votes out of the bag. We are starting with the yellow player. 1, 2, 3. We are placing them here. So that's good and bad. First of all, yellow didn't draw any of their own votes out, which means it's nothing. But they also reduced the chances for the other players to pull their votes, because again, these votes, they cannot be pulled by the other players, obviously. So wow, that was definitely, yeah, again, good or bad. Let's move back to the blue player. They will do the same. They will draw 1, 2, 3 votes out of the bag. And they did the same thing. 2 from red and 1 from yellow. Wow, red already lost 4 votes out of the bag, and they just put in 3 more because of their happiness. Okay, they are pretty mad now, but let's see what they are drawing. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, 2 votes, so that's good. So they are already in the lead, so that's not bad. So we continue now. We are going back to the yellow player. And again, we do that until the bag is empty. 3 more votes from the yellow. Wow, he just drew 3 votes out of the bag, which means yellow is currently in the lead. Now that's massive, so I guess there's really not a chance that blue can pull this off. But wow, they also have drawn 2, so they are now in a tied with the red player. The problem now is they are first, so they will lose any ties in this case. So that's definitely on them, but we still have to draw some more. Let's see what red is drawing here. And okay, 1 more vote. So they are also tied with the yellow player. But again, red has the 2nd position here, so they will lose ties against the yellow player. But I believe there are still, yeah, 2 more votes in the bag. 2 more, yeah, 2 more. So let's see what those are, and bam! Yellow definitely won. Not really by a landslide, but definitely not close either. So now we assign the offices. Again, yellow has won that, which means yellow is going to be the president. Hooray. We are doing something right now. In this case, we are awarding the yellow player with 25 victory points right off the bat. The thing now is, this one here, we are checking all the votes that we have drawn, and only the own ones are basically getting back into their player reserve. So they are not getting back into the vote bag for the next election. But again, they will be president. They will have to resolve laws when it's their turn. And I think I will show you at least one of those in this video. But that's basically the president. The vice president is going to the red player with 3 votes in total. So they will gain 10 points right off the way. So that's basically the now part of this card. And also the same thing from all the votes that have been drawn, the own ones and the votes from the president are being put back basically to their player reserves. So again, yellow doesn't have any more votes in the bag after this election, and they will also be allowed to do something during their stuff. It's not really optional, that's something that you have to do. And last but not least, the blue player will be the llama. I think that it's an abbreviation for something, and I believe it's based on, which one is it? It's based on another game by Hans im Glücksspiele, this llama. What was it? I keep forgetting. But again, they will still score 3 points right away. That's really not an awful lot. Again, The votes from the presidents are being sent back to their reserve. And now all the votes that are still in front of the other players, so the red and the blue ones from the players, are basically put back into the bag. So with the next election, the blue player has a pretty good chance getting the election, but the same is true for the red player, because the president pulled an awful lot of those out. Oops, maybe I should show these to you. So this will be in the bag for the next election to come. So really, yellow has to work hard to stand any chances to become the president with the next election. But it's not unlikely we will see a third one. And keep in mind, also not just the points that are awarded immediately. At the end of the game, whoever is the president will also score 20 more points. So really, becoming president can be pretty huge. So we basically have done this, and now we are resetting the election track back to 0. And I believe again it was the yellow player. So I think we are moving back to the blue player. Let's do one more round so that I can show you these officers in more detail. So now we have the blue player. The blue player is the llama. Because we are not immoral, we don't get the victory points. But in this case, we simply gain 1 happiness bump. Each time it's our turn, as long as we are a moral player, we will gain 1 happiness bump. So this can be pretty nice. But of course, again, the president just got 25 victory points. This is huge. Again, you have to trigger those, but it's nothing that you have to do at the start of your turn. But it's typically recommended to do that as soon as possible so that you don't forget. It's really very much important for the president, because they have to do the laws, which will typically also involve the other players in one way or the other. But yeah, again, we will come to that in a second too. Let's do our turn. Again, we are starting with our suitcase. And because I don't learn, I will go for a red corporation again. Which again means we are losing our happiness. But right now we are still on neutral, which is kind of okay. I believe... do we want to build though? That's the question. Okay, wait a second. Do we want to build something or not? Let me check my hand of cards. Oof, I don't think so. No. Okay, that was stupid. So I guess, no, we cannot go in here. I think we cannot go in here because there's nothing we can build effectively. So I think in this case, it's still something very similar. We will go to this corporation. We will still, lose our happiness, but I think this is the better deal. So we have paid the cost. We will simply place 2 of our votes into the bag. And I believe once you are out of votes, you get 1 victory point each time you are not placing actual votes into the election bag, or vote tokens. So you will always get something. So we have done this. This is good because we need the work keys. We have just lost 3 and getting more could be crucial. But let's also produce. And again, we will most certainly go for the bottom row. So we get this one here, we get 1 plastic, and we get 1 leaf. So that was our production. Do we want to upgrade something maybe? Is there something else we need? Do we need more of this helium? Now let's hold on. We have $10, so let's hold on to that. That's fine. So we have the votes, we had the production. Now we get 4 workies actions. So with 2, we are simply getting 2 more crafties out, 2 orange. And then we have 2 more actions to go. And I think we go for this one here again, 1 and 2, though this department is full. Again, we are spending our thing here. We are getting 20 victory points. Again, that's not nothing early in the game. And we are getting 2 faction bumps. But again, as it doesn't have the check mark on it, we simply get the 2 bumps. So we can move them out evenly. And in this case, I think we are simply doing 1 and 2 bumps here, which would ultimately result in 8 more victory points for that. No, I totally take that. I mean, we want to earn some points in this game. Okay, that's cool, but I believe those were all of the actions from the blue player. Back to red. They are the vice president and they are moral, which means they're not getting the 6 victory points here. They gain 1 faction bump, and for this we would definitely want to advance on the final faction track here. For their action, they will move to this corporation, which means they're losing 1 happiness. So they're at -1, but that's still okay. Then they build, they can get a news, and they get 3 workies actions. Let's go for the news first. And this is the one piece which we also noticed during our last sessions. Those cards are incredibly swingy. I mean, here everyone gets a happiness bump. and we only get one of those faction bumps. And we are getting immoral. Again, being immoral, not necessarily a bad thing. It really depends a little bit on what it is you're trying to do. But this one here is solely for us. We are also getting the faction bump, and we also immediately gain 5 victory points without getting anything to the others. So these cards remind me a little bit of viticulture, where some of these cards are also incredibly swingy, but maybe it's still working out to be okay. So, and I think, yeah, I think we want this cheat thing here now, right? Because we have a lot of votes in there. So instead of the victory points, we are going for the cheat tile, and I believe we want the extra draw. We get to choose one of those. So we are spending $5 for that. So that's what it says here to flip it over, but we also immediately gain 2 victory points because we have covered this. So with the next election, each time it's our turn, we are drawing 4 instead of 3 of those vote tiles. So this can be really, really huge. Let's not forget the faction bump. And again, we could simply move over here for 4 points, but I think in this case, let's do it a little bit differently. We are moving on the capital track here as well. Right, this could be 8 points for the next time we are triggering it, but it's also 2 actions, right? Or we could gain the $6, which could also be relatively important. Nice. Then we are going for the, does it matter? Let's go for the building action first. And because we're a little bit low on cash, we will go for the tailor here, right? So we are spending 10, getting 5 back. And this would award us with 4 more victory points. I take that. Cool. Well, that was our building action. I think I forgot to draw another card, but I basically did that off camera. I have to remember this time for the red player. We still have 3 more workies actions. So we could now start to prepare this, but we need 4 of those. Or again, we could go for this one. But again, this is something where I want some meat first, maybe. So maybe, that's not ideal. That's not ideal. We could use the headquarters now. Basically getting our happiness back. But here we would gain $20. The leaves. Oh, we could gain a lot of dollars now in this case. If we're going for the greenery, we would lose this. But again, $20 gives us some flexibility. And again, at the end of the game, $3 is also worth 1 victory point. But there are definitely better ways to deal with that. So I guess for one action, we are definitely going for another crafty. And then we have 2 more, right? Yeah, let's do the greenery for now. Yeah. So let's trigger that. We will lose the blue influence we just got. So the capitalists really don't like all this green stuff, but therefore we will gain 2 leaves. Right now we are maxed out on leaves, which means we have to immediately sell those for $4 each. So that's 8 billies here plus the 20 we are getting here. So it's $28 in total, which would put us into a nice position to build a sea building relatively soon. So I definitely do like that. Nice. But I believe those were all of the actions for the red player. Over to yellow, who happens to be an immoral president, which means we have to go for one of those blue laws. We don't get to choose, we have to resolve a law, but all of these laws have typically an option on them. So let's see what we get. And here we okay, that's a nasty one. And that's a ban for contraceptions. So we can now either, it's totally on us. It's the president who chooses. We can be in favor, basically be the mean one, or we can be against that contraception ban. If we are for that, we are getting 3 crafties. Of course, we are gaining more workers, or the others will gain 1. If we are against that, we would gain 10. And all others, and really all others in this case, not the president herself, will gain 2 happiness. Oh, that's a mean one, actually. I don't want to give 2 happiness to the other players, actually. So it seems being now immoral might not pay off as the president. No, I think, unfortunately, we are playing it Catholic here. And we'll go for 3 crafties here for us and 1 for the others. Are we over already? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, we are still good, but that's basically the law. Again, you don't have to do that right at the start of your turn, but again, it's a good idea to do that anyway, so you are not forgetting. Okay, that was our duties as the president. And then we have to decide which action to go for. And I think we want this because we want some workies actions. And we also gain some votes. That's never a bad thing, right? First of all, we have to lower our happiness because we were dealing with a greedy corporation. Then we are adding 2 votes into the vote bags. These are the first 2 votes for the next election to come. Keep in mind, we removed all the yellow votes out of that bag. Then we are producing and or gaining some workies actions. Is the order, does it matter? I think it does. Let's produce first. So we are spending our $11, basically getting 1 back. So we really broke. But I believe we do want the technology markup, right? And I think we don't necessarily need, we have a leaf, we have a, I don't really know. Let's put it, no, let's put it onto this space. Again, we are producing with the first row. So let's get those containers. So we are adding 1 here. We are gaining a water, and for the first time in the game, we are gaining 1 of those microchips. Now we have produced, and we are getting 4 workies actions. Now that's not bad. For the first 3, we are doing this, this, and that. So we are immediately triggering this, and I think we are going for those dolls, right? So yeah, we are spending 1 of our material in order to gain 1 to happiness. So we are again in the positive, and we will score 25 victory points. Now that's not nothing. We still have 1 more actually, which we could use on our profit. I really hate to say that. We could lose this one for 15 bucks and a vote. I think that's not bad. But 2 more happiness here is also not terrible, right? But 15 is better. We are really broke. So now we are using our last action here. We are going for this, which means we are spending our technology right away. Therefore, we are getting 15 quid. I take it, and we are allowed to place 1 more vote into the vote bag. So we are back at 3, so that's not nothing either. Cool stuff. And I believe those were all of our actions for the yellow player. And I believe that you should have seen most of the game now. So we have seen an election, we have seen basically how the influence is working, we have flipped more of those corporations, we have bought stuff, we have sold stuff, we have triggered the event card, and I think I forgot to reveal a new one, and that's, what is it? It's a brailer, so you could gain 2 material or 2 plastic for that. Again, that's really something. When you compare this to 5 victory points or 1 of those cheating tiles, this is incredibly weak. And I think this is really, I don't know if I like this, that these cards are so stringy. Let's take the 3rd one in here. I mean, you have to go to the lowest level. Wherever you are with this one, you have to go to the lowest level. If you're already down, then you're not losing anything, but this can be really tough to recover from. Everyone else also drops the happiness by 1. You get 2 faction bumps in each of the tracks. That's really strong. But again, these cards are so different in respect to their power, in respect how punching they are. So I really don't know. I really don't. I have to really play it more often to make a more informed guess if it's really hurting the game or if it's fine as it is. But again, I think I will call it for today. I was telling you I'm most likely not going to the bitter end. The only thing that I didn't show you is to exchange 1 of those A corporations with the B corporations, but they are not so different, right? I mean, they come in different flavors later on. They do different kind of stuff, but ultimately they do the same action. We will not see any more actions coming from those. They are simply getting rearranged a little bit. And yeah, I think, not sure if it does make sense to continue playing with an extended video. If I really get an amazing amount of requests for a second extended video, I will definitely consider one. But again, I do think that you have seen most of it, and I really do hope you enjoyed my little walkthrough here. And yeah, before I forget again, I think at this time I already did it at the start of the video, so that was not too bad. But still, another shout out to all of my patrons and channel members out there. You guys are amazing. Again, you can join me on Patreon, you can join me here on YouTube, you can leave a little donation with a thanks button beneath this video. Like and subscribe. Again, this also greatly helps the channel. And yeah, with that being said, really hope to see you in one of my other videos, and until then, bye bye.